Good morning, Timberview Church. My name is Manny Salinas. I'm the Director of Community here. I just like having fun with the Lord and like having fun with you guys. So I got a couple announcements. Thanks for sitting. Get your legs a rest. I see some young people still here in the room. Just in case you guys didn't know, if you're between the ages of 5 years old and 18 years old, we are doing a Christmas play. So if you want to be part of that Christmas play or that Christmas event, feel free to go upstairs and you guys can go join it up there. So if you're between 5 years old and 18, I'm sorry, I see a couple of people that are over 18, so sorry, you guys can't join. So 5 to 18, feel free. It's every Sunday until we do our Christmas event. A couple other announcements for you guys here. If you want a dessert, because we have been doing a dessert raffle because it's biblical, if you won a dessert, don't forget to take it home today with you. If you don't take it home, praise the Lord. That means I'm taking a dessert home with me. So don't forget. Or if you want to leave it for me, then we'll take it. So don't forget to take your dessert home. Another thing is, stick around with us today after church. We're doing a potluck. I heard a sermon about patience. Did you guys hear that? Testing. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Did you guys hear it? Should I redo the whole first announcement? Did you guys hear that at all? If you're between 5 years old, 18, okay, you guys heard it? Don't worry about it. The dessert one, forget. Don't take it home with you because I'll take it home. But that's today. Don't forget to get your dessert. Stick around with us after church today because today is Potluck Sunday. So there's going to be a lot of food to eat. And we want to fellowship together because that's what we do. That's what family does. We hang around. We talk to each other. We eat delicious food. And we're also going to be decorating the church today. So if you're able to stay around for a little while and you want to help decorate, and you can help decorate, I encourage you to stay, eat some food, and decorate with us. This is the last announcement I have for you guys. I'm going to call up one of our members here. Her name's Tara, and she's going to speak a little bit more about Stronger Families and the ministry that we partner with this year. It was a brand new ministry we've partnered with. So come on up.
Good morning. I am Tara Martin, and I'm representing Olive Crest, our strong families, safe families for Timberview Church. And we have been working on building this ministry for some time now, since like the summertime, but we've been holding strong, just like our name, Strong Families. And we finally have our first host family. And what a blessing. And our first host family is Troy and Marie Ogle. If you would love to give them the round of applause. And they're not only our first host family, but they are actually hosting their first child already as well. Yes, praise Jesus. They are hosting a 6-month-old baby boy, keeping him safe from the cold as his mother and father are struggling with homelessness right now and living in their car. And they are projected to have this child until about the first of the month, when their mom and dad will be, when his mother and dad rather will be placed in housing. Hopefully, so let's keep praying for that to happen. And bless their hearts for doing that. That's what this ministry is for, is to be able to host families in crisis, just to have their children in our home just for a short period of time so that they don't have to go into special services or like CPS, stuff like that, just to give their family a safe place for their children. If you visited that little short video time that we had back in the summer, that was a long time ago, and you did take a coach packet and you want to turn that in, that would be great. The coach packet is if you have a special skill in like behavior or helping children integrate into your family, because sometimes it's hard to do that. Please, interested, turn that into me, If you need more information on that, also come visit with me after church. Also, if you want to be a family friend or anything like that and interested in getting your name on a family tree, putting your number with me, because this takes a team. It's not just a host family that has a child. They need all the help in the world. This is like a community thing that we are needing each other, somebody to lean on, call, come and help, donate things that they may need. So if you're interested in doing that and leaning your phone number to me, please do that. That would be great. So that the Ogles will never be alone, or anyone else that wants to also be a host family will never be alone. And I have extra host family packets as well. Right now, the Ogles don't need anything specific, but they would like to send this little guy home with some special things so that they're not losing sleep at night when he goes back to his family. Some specific things is like some soy formula, size 3 diapers, 4 Dr. Brown bottles, a fuzzy blanket, a backpack that could be used for a diaper bag, some sleep sacks, and a snowsuit. So just some basic things to keep him warm with his family. I will put that list in the lobby. It'll also go in the newsletter. Olive Crest, our little ministry, has a special spot in the newsletter now. So always just take a look on that, because we're also going to have like a revolving donation closet, so that when we do have hostings, that we can just take some stuff for the family, return it, and just kind of have a revolving door for those families when we're hosting children. And also, again, if you're willing or being called to host yourself or want to be a family friend or a coach, just meet up with me and I will definitely lead you the way for that. And I'm just so proud to be a part of this ministry and see this coming into fruition. Thank you so much, church, and let's give them a round of applause again and keep them in your prayers.
How's this, Gary? How's this, Gary? How's this, Gary? Good morning. Today's reading is from Jeremiah chapter 52, verses 31 to 34. In the 37th year of the exile of King Jehoiachin of Judah, evil Merodach ascended to the Babylonian throne. He was kind to Jehoiachin and released him from prison on March 31st of that year. He spoke kindly to Jehoiachin and gave him a higher place than all the other exiled kings in Babylon. He supplied Jehoiachin with new clothes to replace his prison garb and allowed him to dine in the king's presence for the rest of his life. So the Babylonian king gave him a regular food allowance as long as he lived. This continued until the day of his death.
Morning, church. I'm not trying to humble brag, but I'm certain that I've suffered more than anybody in this room. And I have proof. Today I woke up and I put on the sweater, and after I got to church, someone pointed out to me that a moth had eaten a hole in the back of my sweater. Now, just so you guys know, we usually don't get this dark and gritty at this church, but hopefully I make it through the day. Actually, though, somebody who really has suffered is a guy named Louis Zamperini. Louis Zamperini. He's an Italian dude, well, American Italian, and apparently they made a movie about him called Unbroken. I know there's a book about him, but I was reading about him. And this guy was a World War II vet, and he was a prisoner of war. And he went through a bunch of torture and a lot of terrible things. When he came home, he had severe PTSD and severe anger. And he got married a few months after he got back to this woman named Cynthia. And with his anger and his PTSD, which is understandable that he had it, right? It's understandable that after all the torture and things he had been through, he would have PTSD and all this. But it flowed from him to his wife. So he's very abusive to his wife. He was very mean to her. He had tons of anger issues with her. And he was drinking a lot. So he was struggling with alcohol as well. So she became a victim of the issues he got from the war. Now, did she deserve any of that? Not at all. I mean, she wasn't the one who helped him captive and tortured him and did any of this. But she was receiving some of the anger he had towards them upon her. In fact, one night she was pregnant, and he drank himself to sleep. He was having night terrors, and he woke up, and he was choking one of the guards who was torturing to death. And after a few seconds, he realized he was choking his pregnant wife in bed. So sometimes this abuse was accidental like that, but sometimes it was intentional, just because he was filled with so much rage. So she decided she was going to leave him. And Christians and just human beings in general fight over when you should get divorced and when you don't get divorced. Traditionally, we have like the 3 A's for when you can get divorced, And it's complicated. Don't think of this like rules, but I'm just going to go through it. One is adultery. So if your spouse cheats on you, then that may be grounds for divorce. Abandonment, if you have a non-believing spouse that just leaves your life, that could be grounds for divorce. And the last one is abuse. And abuse isn't when you're unhappy because your husband's a knucklehead, right? That's just everyone in the room. Abuse is when there's a pattern of violence that happens consistently. And this would fit abuse for sure, because he was putting hands on her. He wasn't just angry at home sometimes, like he was putting hands on her consistently. And so she decided she was going to leave him. She wasn't a Christian. And then in 1949, shortly after the war, and she's deciding to leave him, she decides to go to a Billy Graham crusade. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of Billy Graham. He's almost as famous as Pastor Matt. But Billy Graham, does anybody actually not know who Billy Graham is? We all do, right? Okay. So if you don't know, Billy Graham is an evangelist, and he went around for decades and decades and decades, and he really pioneered how to leverage technology and share the gospel with tens of thousands of people at a time sometimes. And he would just lead thousands of people to Christ. And so what Billy Graham does is he works with a really extensive organization. He's with the Lord now, and his son is keeping the ball rolling. Is Franklin Graham still alive? He is? Okay, that's good. So Billy Graham, he's the one who devised this method, but he goes into a town and he holds basically what we think of like revival meetings. The old school revival meetings. He remixed it so he could do it in arenas with TVs and music and stuff, and he does it for about a week. And during that week, it just leads a lot of people to Christ. Well, in 1949, Billy Graham was doing a crusade, and Cynthia decided to go. And Billy Graham was preaching. She felt God tug on her heart, and she became a Christian that night. And that night, she made some crazy decisions. She decided not to divorce her husband, which again, as a pastoral counselor, I would seriously talk with her about being able to divorce this guy, because she was actually unsafe and her baby was actually unsafe, right? So that's something we would definitely consider and talk about. But she just decided, no, God's more powerful, which is crazy because she's a new believer. Like, what does she know? But apparently she was audacious enough to think that the first day she became a Christian, the Holy Spirit would speak to her. And so that's sarcasm for those of you who don't speak that language. So she became a Christian at this Billy Graham crusade, and she decided not to divorce her husband. She went home, and she asked her husband to go to the Billy Graham crusade, and he said, no way. Not going to happen. So she kept begging him and asking him and asking him and asking him. And as every man in here knows, when you put your foot down and you tell your wife no, what happens? So a couple nights later, he's at the Billy Graham crusade. And he's there with his wife, and the Lord converts him too. And he becomes a Christian. And then they stayed married for another 5 or 6 decades. And after he became a Christian, he started working with at-risk youth. He dealt with his PTSD. He stopped being an alcoholic. And he dedicated the rest of his life not only to his wife and raising the family, and God healed their marriage and brought things back together, but he was doing ministry to at-risk youth for the rest of his life. And he died in his 90s. Now, if I was looking this from the outside, and I saw a man who was filled with anger and hatred, even if it was from PTSD, and he's slapping his wife around because of it, I don't think he deserves to be able to go back to her when she decides to separate. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he doesn't deserve the marriage he has because he might actually kill her and he might actually kill the unborn baby. Like, this person's not safe. And that's me in the flesh. And I don't think it's terrible advice, but when the Lord gets involved, the game changes. And what the Lord did in this situation is he softened the wife's heart. She decided not to get a divorce and to try and get this guy to go to a crusade so he could find who the Lord is. And then he went back to his wife, and she let him back into the house, and then they did a long, long, fruitful marriage. Today I'm supposed to preach about thankfulness today because Thanksgiving is coming up, right? Let me do that sermon real quick. Be grateful. Okay, now for this sermon. We're wrapping up the book of Jeremiah today. And it's been a long haul, hasn't it? It's a great book. This next season is Christmas season. We'll go through that. Then next year we're going to go through the book of James. We're going to go through the book of Jonah. We're going to go through a couple of the Bible books. But the whole book of Jeremiah has been, hey, maybe you don't sin so much because when you sin a lot, you pursue a cursed life. And when you get a cursed life, God might abandon you and you have to have consequences because that's the best chance of bringing you back. So part of the theology of Jeremiah could be summed up in the phrase, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? And so that's what the people did for decades and decades. Jeremiah, who was called as a prophet as a young man, he's speaking for God. He's telling them, hey, stop disobeying God. Because if you disobey God, you're going to get taken from the land. You're going to be exiled. You're going to be destroyed. A foreign pagan, non-Christian nation is going to dominate you, and you're going to get crushed. So turn around, stop sinning. And the people just went, no, sin's pretty awesome, and they just kept doing it. And so eventually, we saw this foreign power called the Babylonians come in, and they did destroy the Israelite nation. And they did deport the people of Judah, the nation that was there. And they did conquer the city of Jerusalem. They installed a puppet governor. I mean, all the stuff that happened. So the theology of Jeremiah is basically your best possible chance at a blessed and flourishing life is to follow God with everything you possibly have, not to hold anything back or pursue sin. Because when you organize your life around something that's the created order instead of the creation, that's got idolatry, it disorganizes your life, and it leads to ruin and desperation. That's Jeremiah in a nutshell, right? But you get these seeds in there too. In fact, they're not seeds. You get pages of conversation about this. But there's also a hint in there that, well, again, it's not a hint. He says, if you organize your life around a created thing, your life will be a disaster. And when your life's a disaster, I'm going to get involved then too. And I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to make things good again. I'm going to make all things new. I'm going to give you your land back, your country back, your blessings back, even though you're a moron. And you see this all the way through the book of Jeremiah. In fact, when God first calls Jeremiah, you guys remember what the Lord said? He goes, I'm going to touch your mouth. I'm going to let you preach to nations. I'm going to root you down, and you can root or unplant nations. The preaching is going to be powerful. And by the way, all of your sermons, all of your prophecy, all of the words I tell you to tell the people, it's not going to work. The people will sin. A foreign power will come in and destroy the nation because people will not repent and turn directions. They won't change the direction of their life. How would you feel if God called you, hey, I have a missionary for you, or I have a mission for you for the rest of your life, and you're not going to get anything done. It's going to fail. But obedience is for you to do what I'm asking you to do. Which, as a side sermon, might mean that if you assume that God has blessed everybody with success, and that's a sign of walking in the Lord, maybe not so much. Maybe the fact that you're failing in life with your organizational goals or whatever you want to call them, maybe that's a sign of obedience. It all comes down to hearing the Holy Spirit and doing what the Lord is asking you to do. Take that to heart, especially if you're going into the ministry. Okay, so Where am I in my sermon here? Oh, yeah, this is going to be really, really good. So, what we have with the book of Jeremiah, he's called, and God already knows they're going to fail, and he tells Jeremiah as much. But he keeps telling Jeremiah as he's going as well that even though your prophecy ministry will fail in the sense that the people won't repent, I'm still going to go to where the people are exiled in the midst of their desperation in the deepest, darkest part of their life that they brought upon themselves, and especially because they don't deserve it. I, the Lord, whose arm is not too short to save, I will reach out and I will grab them, I will bring them back to the promised land, and through a descendant of David, I'll restore all the promises that I gave to them. So we get depressed when we read Jeremiah because God sounds very angry. And here's my first question. Do you blame him? Like when you look around this world, are you angry? I don't know, man. I don't think this is the way it's supposed to be. I get angry when I see the world at times. And imagine your God who sees all the world at all times simultaneously. I think he's justified to feel a little anger, a little wrath. But if we think God is just angry and that we got to follow the rules before he likes us again, I think we're missing the point of Jeremiah and maybe the point of the whole Bible. Okay, in the book of Genesis, let's go to the beginning. In the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. Why? Does he need the heavens and the earth? Like the other gods of old, does he need people to make him lunch? No, that's not God, right? What is God missing when he creates humans? Nothing. Like, God's perfect. He's complete. So why did he make us? Why did he make anything at all? Because love creates. Love creates things. I think of it like this. If I'm hiking in the mountains and I see a beautiful meadow and I'm by myself, sometimes I want to share that beauty with somebody. Sometimes I wish Michelle or one of my girls was with me so they could see it too. Right? And you think of the beauty of God. Love creates. What if he just created us to bless us? Not because he needed anything. I read this book once and I threw it across the room for two things, because it was a fictional, it was like a dramatization of the creation story, and it said that God rested on the seventh day because he was tired. That's the first thing that made me mad. Like, God doesn't get tired. He's not my fat Uncle Frank. So he wasn't tired, but the other thing is it said God was lonely, and so he made human beings because he needed friends. I promise you, if God just needed friends and he was lonely, he would have stopped after he made dogs. Why mess it up with humans? Like, dogs are perfect. We don't deserve dogs. And so why would you do more than a mastiff? You wouldn't. And with all due respect to Mrs. G, I don't know if he'd make chihuahuas. I just don't know. So in the beginning, God creates the heavens and earth, and he creates everything. But shortly into the story, humans kind of mess things up. We sin, we start fighting with each other, we start hiding, we start lying, and chaos breaks out. And then humans multiply in their cities, and what happens in the cities? Peace? No. People do what people do in cities as well. So there's more chaos. They build this huge city, there's a tower in it, and God says, nope, and then they scatter. And it's just a train wreck. Then God takes one guy named Abraham, and he makes a nation out of him. And through these people, through Abraham's descendant, somehow he's going to bless the whole world. Which is weird, because back in the day, gods belonged to one tribe and one place. You know, in the ancient world, temples were literally God's houses. And so if you visited a temple of Apollo in Corinth, that was Apollo, the god, lived in that temple in Corinth. And then if you visited Rome, you were visiting another iteration of Apollo in that house. And so gods lived in houses, and they actually just had tribes that they took care of. And here, way back in the day, they're saying somehow the whole world, not just one tribe, but the whole world's going to be blessed through this one guy, through God. And so Abraham kicks out a bunch of kids. He ends up with this big tribe. They go to Egypt, and you guys remember what happens in Egypt, right? You've read the book of Exodus, or you've seen the movie Prince of Egypt. Both excellent. And so Val Kilmer never died, right? I should have got applause at that. I'm sad it didn't happen. So what happens is they become a people, they become oppressed, and they get a home. God takes them out of Egypt and he gives them a home. It's the opposite of being kicked out of your house. He brings them out of a terrible place and he gives them a place. It's the opposite of exile. And so they exit Egypt, and they get this place and they get this land and they start filling it up. And then they start having kings and they start doing politics and they start deciding how things are going to go. And how godly would you say politics tend to be? Right? They had a good king here and there, but typically politics was just politics. And so they organized themselves apart from God, and the people did not do what was good in God's sight. What level of confidence could you tell me that governments across the world are centrally concerned with doing what is right in the eyes of God? Right, my level of confidence would be about not high. And that's the way it was then too. So they're living pretty independently of the Lord, by and large. But the problem is this particular people in this particular place, they were supposed to be different. And they were supposed to show the whole world what God was like. But they didn't. And they weren't. They were acting just like the countries around them. They were the same. And so God, through Jeremiah and other prophets, said, okay, here comes the whooping. When your dad gets home tonight, it's going to be bad. And eventually the Lord shows up, he punishes them, and they lose their home and they go into exile. But again, there's these promises in Jeremiah that not because you're good, not because you're competent, not because you're skilled, not because you have a great plan, but because God is loving, he's going to bring you back. And he's not going to bring you back because you deserve it, because you don't. But actually, because you don't deserve it, God, who is loving and he likes to share beauty and blessings and good things, it's his nature. The fact that he's loving is what's going to bring you back. Parents, do you always give gifts to your children because your children have earned them? No. Kids are blessings from God, and they're cute little parasites. Right? Kids are worthless. They can't work. For a long time, they can't even dress themselves. You remember the freedom you got when your kids could dress themselves or when they could hold their own bottle? I mean, just the freedom, the blessings of God. That just shows you how deep into the pit of vampiricism you find yourself with children. And so they can't do stuff. But why do you give your kids gifts? Because, man, when their face lights up, right? You give your children gifts because you're a loving parent, not because they've earned the wages. That's what a gift is. A gift is something you haven't earned. If you've earned it, what's it called? It's called a paycheck. But if you haven't earned it, it's a gift. And the word the Bible uses for gift is this word called grace. It's something you get that you haven't earned. And so God, by his grace, he's going to give them a gift, especially because they don't deserve it. It's because God is a loving father that he's going to bring them back. And he says this multiple times through the book of Jeremiah. And it's weird at the end of the book of Jeremiah, we get this short little conversation about this king that's being able to eat at a pagan king's table. Did you guys hear that story and you're like, why are we reading this? What does this have to do with anything? It's actually near the end of the book of Jeremiah. And it highlights what I've been talking about God's nature and his promises to us. Okay, so I want to read it again and walk through it. The very end of the book here, Jeremiah chapter 52, verse 31, and the 37th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim of Judah. So King Jehoiakim was a descendant of King David. You guys remember him? Took out Goliath with a rock. Yeah, he was awesome. And he brought together all the tribes. Well, not really. He maintained a unified kingdom. And then there was a civil war under Solomon. Now I'm just rambling about history. You don't care. But Jehoiakim was a descendant of King David. And when they went out into exile, Jehoiakim was the ruler. So he's a descendant of King David. And now he's living over in Babylon. He's not in Jerusalem. And do you know what ancient Middle Eastern sheiks typically did to conquer kings? Can you guess what a Middle Eastern sheik would do to a conquered king? Okay, it wasn't feed them. It was bad stuff. Seriously, if you just read some history about it, it's brutal. I don't want to go through it because I don't want to gross you guys out. But in the 37th year, this is in the 560s BC, of the exile of King Jehoiakim of Judah, evil Merodach. How would you like to have your first name be evil? That's brutal. That's why he became king, because people bullied him and he overcompensated. And so now he's the ruler of Babylon. It's like half the guys in the gym. A girl rejected him and now they deadlift heavy. Okay, so evil Merodach ascended to the Babylonian throne. Evil Merodach is not the one who conquered Jerusalem. He's the king after the one who conquered Jerusalem. And so what obligation does he have to be kind or anything to the previous ruler in Jerusalem? None. In fact, new emperors tend to clean house. They tend to just to kind of kill the slate of people before them and start over. But a lot of unexpected things are happening here. Because he releases the king, he was kind to Jehoiakim, and he released him from prison. He spoke kindly to him and all the other exiled kings in Babylon, because the Jews weren't the only people conquered by Babylon. There were other exiled kings of other nations. He supplied Jehoiakim with new clothes to replace his prison garb and allowed him to dine in the king's presence for the rest of his life. Isn't this bizarre? So the Babylonian king gave him a regular food allowance as long as he lived. This continued until the day of his death. And then the book of Jeremiah ends. You're like, what is going on? That's a weird ending. Well, let me tell you what's going on here. These seeds of promise that someday people are going to be restored and people are going to be drawn back. This is a hint. Again, it ends on a note of hope that this is going to happen. Because this powerless, weak king who got conquered, instead of being executed or tortured and then executed and then displayed as a warning to people, he was actually invited to the dinner of the king, and he was supplied with a whole new life. That did Jehoiakim earn this life? No. What did Jehoiakim deserve in the eyes of the king of Babylon? Death. The whole reason they had to go back is because they killed one of the governors, and then they allied with Egypt to try and keep he was making life difficult on the Babylonians. So typically what you would do is just kill this guy. And so what the scripture is showing here is this pagan king somehow was stirred in his heart by God to show kindness to this person who didn't deserve it. And what this person represented was the Davidic kingdom. And what's crazy is way back in the book of Genesis, there's this tiny little promise. And it's weird. Remember when they got busted eating fruit from the tree they shouldn't have eaten from? And then he says, hey, Adam, what's going on here? And he goes, oh, I don't know. It was her. She gave it to me. I ate it. I didn't know what tree it was from. I had no idea, right? He just passed the buck. So then he goes to Eve. Hey, what's going on here? She goes, I don't know, the snake. Snake was just yapping away. I trusted him. I ate the wrong, it wasn't my fault. And then a snake, what does God say? He just says, you're cursed. He's like, I'm done with the excuses. He doesn't even ask him why he did it. He's just like, you're cursed. You're going to eat dirt forever. But in this mix, he curses man and he curses woman. Remember, with man, he's going to do a lot of farming and it's going to be rough. Okay, with the woman, childbirthing is going to hurt now. And there's going to be conflict between her and the man. But there's this little seed of a promise in there in the midst of a curse being given. And this little seed of a promise is, he says to the serpent, that there's a seed of the woman that's going to stomp and crush the head of the snake. This is very weird for a lot of reasons. So let's lay the groundwork. You guys want to get biblical? Let's do this. Okay, snakes in the Bible, good or bad? Bad. Yeah, this snake was a liar. You jump to the book of Revelation. What's the biggest snake you can imagine? A dragon, right? And there's a dragon with a bunch of heads on it, and, Jesus drop kicks him too. It's no problem. But you see, snakes throughout the Bible are a symbol of bad, evil. In a lot of cultures, they're a symbol of wisdom and goodness, but not in the Hebrew culture, always bad. Okay, So someday he's promising that this evil and all the evil that the serpent has brought about is going to be overcome, and Satan's head is going to be crushed. But he says the seed of the woman. Okay, it's been a long time since I was in high school. What was that class called? Human development. Yeah, whatever it's called. But we talked about the birds and the bees there. And if I can remember, the seed came from the guy and the girl was the field. Is that accurate? Okay, I'm trying not to use the words because I don't want to be a weirdo. But in this passage, he says the seed of the woman. And then in biblical culture, when do you ever see descendants reckoned by the woman? Never. It's like this guy begat, that guy begat, that guy begat, that guy begat, that guy begat, and then you give up and you don't read the rest of the Bible, right? By the way, if you're struggling through this passage, just skip them and come back to them later. Just go to like a section of war, because that's awesome. And then if you're a guy or if you're a girl, skip to a chapter on love. And then, go back to begats later. But it's always reckoned through the male. So what is going on in the Bible? And then later on, there's this promise that there's a descendant of King David, because King David is the one who kind of led, him and Solomon, they led Israel at the height of its power and the height of it having a homeland. It was very secure and it had a place. And now they're homeless again. And so there was this idea that a descendant of King David was going to come back and restore the fortunes of everybody. So you have all these weird promises in the Old Testament that haven't really been wrapped up. There's a seed of a woman that's going to crush a snake and overcome all evil. Okay, whatever seed of a woman means. And then you have this guy named Abraham. One of his descendants is going to bless the whole world. And apparently, David is the king descendant of Abraham. And then you get to King David, and there's going to be a descendant of King David who's going to be a king, and he's going to roll over everything, and his kingdom's never going to end. And then book of Jeremiah ends. Guys having dinner at a table. Have a good life. And then the Old Testament ends with a prophet speaking. And he says, yeah, God's going to do lots of cool stuff. Have a good life. And then the Old Testament's over. And then more than 550 years after the king is able to eat at the table of the Babylonian emperor, there's this baby born under a star in the east. And as we learn about this baby's story, we learn a couple weird things about him. First of all, we find out he's a descendant of King David. And we learn that there's a king who's kind of a half-breed king people didn't like. And he's concerned about this new baby because the baby's descended from a very famous king. And so what he wants to do is kill the baby while the baby's still a baby so he can never become king. And so we got this baby who's a descendant of King David, and he's born a king. And then we have weird rumblings about this shotgun wedding. Like Joseph got married very quickly. But it turns out that Joseph isn't really this baby's real dad. In fact, there seems to be no dad at all, which nobody in their sane mind would believe, right? But God's doing some crazy stuff in this season. And so this baby isn't born from the seed of any man. It's just from the seed of a woman, which has never happened before. And then as this baby is born, he grows up and he starts talking about things like, what is important to God? See, what I always thought was important to God was the good Christian who followed all the rules and did everything they were told. The ones who were always in church, right? The ones who did the good stuff. And of course that person is important to God. But then Jesus starts telling stories about there was a woman who lost a coin in her house, and she swept up the whole house just to find the one coin. You guys have been broke, right? You ever find 20 bucks in a pants pocket? You get happy too. What if it was the only $20 you had? Right? So she's looking for this money, and she finds it. And it wasn't the money she had she was happy about. She was happy about finding the money she lost. Okay, and then there's a story of a shepherd. He has all these sheep, and there's one sheep that goes off. And so he leaves the sheep he already has, and he goes to find the sheep that's lost. Now, does the one sheep that wanders off, does he deserve to be saved by the shepherd? No, that sheep's a moron. He should be wolf food, right? But What's precious to the shepherd? All the sheep he already has? Yes. But what's very precious to the shepherd is the sheep he's lost. And so he goes after this lost sheep, even though the dumb sheep doesn't deserve to be saved. And then the last story he tells, he says there's this dad, and he has a son, and the son's just a punk kid. And the son goes to his father and he says, hey, I know you're not dead yet, but let's pretend you are because I want my inheritance money now. Now, in an ancient Middle Eastern culture, that's not what you call honoring your parents. You don't ask for funeral money before your parents have died. Like, we wouldn't even do that, correct? Okay, one person here would not do that. So he goes to his dad and he says, okay, and the dad gives him his inheritance, and then the son goes off. And what does he spend his money on? Nonprofits and charity? No. He goes to the Vegas Strip. And he does not church activities there, and he loses all of his money. And so finally, he's tending pigs, which was not culturally acceptable to Jews at the time. And he's so hungry and he's so broke, he wants to eat pig slop. Now, I grew up with some Mexicans, and they actually had a pig ranch out in Pasco. Have you guys ever seen pig slop? It is nasty. It is so nasty. It's almost like eating sewage. Like, it's gross. And he finds himself so hungry and so desperate, he thinks, ooh, if I just had a bowl of that slop, that would be delicious. Then he thinks, what am I doing? I'll just go home, I'll fess up that I'm a moron, and maybe if I'm penitent enough, if I'm repentant enough, if I show enough desperation to my dad, maybe he'll finally accept me back if I just say I could just be one of the slaves, I'm not even your son anymore. Maybe if I just feel bad enough, then he'll take me back. And so Jesus is telling this story, and the son comes back, and the dad sees him from far off, and he runs to the son. And before the son can do his rehearsed speech, he just hugs him, he welcomes him back. They kill the biggest sheep. Maybe it was the one the shepherd went and found. I'm just kidding. But they kill the biggest sheep, and they have a feast, and they're super happy that the lost son was found. Jesus is telling these stories. And then he tells one more story, which I think is overlooked, and I love this one. He talks about a king who threw a banquet. And he invited all of his friends, and none of them came. And so what he did instead, he just said, okay, instead go out to the streets and invite just all the losers, whoever you can get. If they're homeless, if they're broke, if they're whatever it is, just get people in here because there's all this food ready and we're going to have a party. And so that's what happened is all these people who don't deserve to be at the party, all these people who don't deserve to be at the party, that didn't earn a place at the party, they get invited to the party and they can come and they can eat at the king's table and have a feast. Which shows us two things. One, Christian hospitality is giving to people who cannot give to us back. Pagan hospitality is when you bless somebody because you know you're going to get something out of it, right? So Christian hospitality is when you give to somebody and you know they can't pay you back, like fostering a child, like adopting a child. There's all kinds of situations we can imagine where we give but we don't receive it. And so Christian hospitality is when you give to somebody generously when you know they don't, there's a hair on my, when you know they don't have the means to pay you back ever. And then secondly, what we learn in addition to what Christian hospitality is, we learn the heart of God. And the heart of God is he wants to bless people who have no means to pay him back and who didn't even deserve a seat at the table in the first place. Why? Because we're pathetic little things? No, because God's heart is just that big. And he loves lost things. Because he wants everybody to be found and he wants everybody to be at the table. And this is what Jesus is saying. And then Jesus goes all the way and he dies on the cross. And it turns out that his death on the cross is this invitation. It's all these things I've talked about. In dying, you think he's lost, but he's actually become a king. In dying, you think Satan won, but he actually crushed the head of Satan because in dying, he overcame sin, Satan, suffering, and death, and destruction, and decay all at one time. And then, on the cross, it looks like God is lost. And all the things Jesus was teaching about wasn't true. But on the cross, that's where God demonstrates his love for us. that he's willing, like any parent, to make incredible sacrifices for our good. And some of you grew up in religious traditions where you thought God kind of hated you. And you thought you weren't following the rules enough. And some of you still feel like you're not good enough to come into the presence of God. Well, that's your qualification. If you don't feel good enough to come to the presence of God, that means you are the one who's invited to the feast. So at the end of Jeremiah, we have this king that doesn't deserve it being treated kindly by a king who typically doesn't act that way, and he's invited to a feast he never earned. And it's a promise that one day Jesus will come, and he will be the one who will give the final invitation to humanity to come to God's table. I haven't looked at my notes in a long time. Oh yeah, this is good. Let's go to the book of Revelation real quick. Revelation chapter 19. Now some of you are weirded out by Revelation because it's weird. And some of you get weird after you read the book and you like build bomb shelters and you got map charts on your wall about when Jesus is coming back. You make your wife start wearing a doily and you stock up on canned foods. Okay, that's not the point of the book of Revelation. The point of the book of Revelation isn't this world is terrible, so be afraid and separate yourself and hide until he comes back. The point of the book of Revelation is Jesus wins. So let's storm the gates of hell because they can't stand against us. Like we're the aggressors. You guys know that, right? Okay, so chapter 19, verse 9 says, "And the angel said to me," this is John, the angel speaking to him and giving this vision, write this, "Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb." And he added, "These are the true words that come from God." Blessed are those who are invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb. And that's what happens in the book of Revelation is basically this huge wedding feast and party happens when heaven is reunited to earth and everything is made new. So here's what I wrote down. Here's the good news. You're invited to the table, especially if you don't deserve the invitation. Did you hear that? Especially if you don't deserve the invitation, you are invited to the table. Not just to barely escape the fires of hell with some fireproof underwear, but to sit at the dinner of the king. And do you know what it means to be invited to a table of a Middle Eastern family? Like even at my house, if I invite you to my table in my house and trust you around my family, that's saying something. And people got mad at Jesus because he ate with who? Or whom? Whom or who? Because who did he eat with? It's because he ate with sinners. People who didn't deserve to be eaten with by a famous rabbi. And when Jesus ate with these people, he was saying, these are the people who are invited to the presence of God. And these are the people who are a part of my chosen family. And the respectable people, some of them, really didn't like Jesus for this. Some people judged Jesus because of who he was eating meals with, because of what eating meals with means in ancient Middle Eastern culture. You guys tracking with me? And God has invited us to his table, especially if we don't deserve it. The invitation isn't based on your worthiness as a person. It's based on God's love for you. Can we just agree that we're all crazy and whacked out? Like we know that about ourselves, don't we? And a big part of life is pretending that we're not. And presenting ourselves to other people like we have it all together, like we have it all figured out. And the reason we do that is because other people will judge us based on all kinds of things. Okay, God is the opposite of that. He already knows you're whacked out. He knows it way better than you, and yet you are invited to the dinner table of the Lamb. So church, here's all I want when you hear the message of Jeremiah today, and here's all I want from you today. I want you to come to the table. Come back to the table. Okay, keep playing your stupid games if you want. Keep trying to figure out life. Keep juggling everything you got. Whatever you got to do. But today, just come back to the table. Whether it's your first time or your 1000th time, today is the time to come to the Lord. Because it changes things. It saves marriages. It makes alcoholics recover. It makes people with anger problems become peaceful. Just like it did for Louis Zamperini and his wife Cynthia, the grace of God heals in miraculous ways. And as little as he deserved to be invited back to his wife's marriage, we are invited back to God. So the only thing that matters today isn't are you respectable, do you fit in at church, do you know the verses, none of that. Remember when the thief was on the cross with Jesus? And he just told the other guy, hey, what are you doing? This guy hasn't done anything. We've earned this death, but we haven't. Leave him alone. What does Jesus say back to him? Today, you'll be with me in paradise. Right after you go through membership class. Today, you'll be with me in paradise. Right after you get baptized. Today, you'll be with me in paradise. Right after you speak in tongues. Today you'll be with me in paradise right after you stop smoking. Today you'll be with me in paradise, whatever, fill in the blank. Whatever churches have told you in the past that qualify you, they're gone. Because the dude died and he was with Jesus that day in paradise, right after the guard killed him. And what did he do between his confession of faith and his death to earn that? Nothing. Because what did he do before to earn that love? Nothing. It's a grace. It's a gift. So church, before we leave those doors at the back of the room, soon we're going to partake in a meal together as we sit down together as a family of God, right? Before we do that, we're going to partake in a meal of communion. And this is you coming back to the dinner table of your Father God. Before you leave those doors, I want you right with God and sitting at his table. And I want your heart made new because you're a part of his family. And it's on you because you've been invited. You've been invited. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I pray that you would draw every heart close to you today and that nobody would leave here not being a Christian, not being a believer, not being a follower of you, not being somebody who knows what it's like to be at your table and to be freed from the burden and the penalty of sin because of your love for us. So, Lord, I pray that you renew our hearts and draw us close to you. We pray in Jesus'